Hey guys, Rob from Georgia here with you. It is episode 7 or week 7, however we look at this thing. But this is schizophrenic synopsis, and again, you guys I think are starting to get clued into what we're doing. But this is an opportunity for me and James to look at a pair of films and to really come at it from an interesting angle as well as we best can, and hopefully give you something unique, something different. And this week is no different. This week begins the first of 2 weeks of looking at Rob Zombie's, his trilogy, the Firefly trilogy. And I will be taking a look at House of a Thousand Corpses from '03, and he will follow up with The Devil's Rejects. And then next week, we both will be taking a look at, that's right, his third piece to this trilogy, 3 from Hell. And so look for that, and that I believe is being planned out. If I'm thinking right, that'll be your Thanksgiving week episode for from Schizophrenic Synopsis. So here we go. House of a Thousand Corpses. A lot has been said about Rob Zombie and his first film, filmed I think in 2000, or ready for release in 2000, but not actually released until '03. It sort of shares an interesting 3-year layover with Spider Baby, which this film, for all intents and purposes, I think springs from. We'll get into that. But this is my copy. This is, I found this at, I want to say Best Buy. Maybe, it seems like it was a Best Buy. But look at this, man. This is just... it's the trilogy, it's the 30 Days in Hell documentary of The Devil's Rejects, and man, it doesn't get any better than a release like this. But Rob Zombie, man, this movie, House, just continually grows on me more and more with every viewing. Looking at it again last night, but with Rob's commentary on, I'm thinking, you know, for this episode, really what we're looking at here is an evolution of a vision, a director's vision, and it begins with Rob's intent to tip his hat to 2 things that he loves near and dear to his heart: the Universal era monster films from way back, and of course the exploitation cinema of the '70s, the Grindhouse era as it was. And really what House ultimately is a vision that brings these 2 loves together, but in a way that, yeah, very quickly can be looked at and said, well, easily its roots are in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And while there may be elements of the film that is true, I think the roots go well beyond Texas Chainsaw, as I said, down into Spider Baby from '67, and even deeper down into James Whale's The Old Dark House from '32. These are roots that go deep. This is a filmmaker, a director who loves his horror and has a great and nostalgic appreciation for the years that were, and wanting to bring that back up in a in a measure of sorts. He had said, I think he had said that upon, of course, when any filmmaker spends a year or so working, with a movie, they get pretty sick of seeing clips of it here and there and just working with it and through it. But he said when he finally got a chance to sit in a theater, I think, and actually see for the first time the film unfold, just watching it as one of us would, he fell in love with it and realized that he had actually done something that you can only dream of doing, and that is making something that you want to go see. And if you want to go see it, well, obviously there's going to be others who are going to enjoy that as well. So, so this evolution of a vision that has its roots deep, I mean deep, down into the Universal days. I mean, this begins when he's running or doing a gig for Universal and an attraction, a Universal Monsters sort of attraction for Halloween, a Halloween attraction. And this, leads to relationships and opportunities to sell a pitch for a film. And it was like, as he talks about it, it was just one of those things that just, I mean, it just fell into place. I mean, Universal pretty much gave him the green light, and I think this film in the end was like, I think he was able to spend about $7 million, I think, which is, you know, that's a lot of money for a movie like this. He was left alone on the back lot at Universal Studios, and he basically had the freedom, the creative freedom, to really just make what he wanted. It really wasn't until the first major screening of this film that Universal had a fallout and realized we just don't want to, we don't want to distribute it. We don't want to put it out. We don't want to put it out. And so, you know, it went from there. He was able to buy it and took it to MGM, and MGM ultimately paid off the final editing of the film. But then there's a fallout there as well due to just, you know, just not understanding something that he had said, and throwing and basically kicking him and his whole crew out. And so then he started shopping around again, and then finally it lands in the laps of Lionsgate. So really, Lionsgate inherits a vision, a film in which you really had complete and absolute creative license, and the bill basically was paid off in terms of the actual film and the editing of the film. And really, Lionsgate will become the caretaker of Rob's vision. And we know this vision will be pushed forward about a year or two later with, of course, The Devil's Rejects, which is so far of a different film, yet evolved. It's the way sequels ought to be, I think, when we think about making a sequel to a film. You think of Aliens to Alien and things of this nature, and I think The Devil's Rejects may be one of the most perfect horror film sequels ever made, with one of the greatest, if not the greatest, ending in horror film history, which some would argue was completely and absolutely undone by this. I haven't even checked this thing out yet. I just know there's a complete full range of thoughts across all the groups, of course, that we're affiliated with, and so I'm waiting for a good moment just to kind of put this in and kind of just receive it on its own merit. But we are talking about vision, and so I just wanted to kind of just spend a few minutes and just share, you know, with you, you know, Rob Zombie. You know, I really appreciate him as a filmmaker, mostly because, you know, we're both kids of the '70s, and he's like the only guy that I'll hear in an interview or whatnot mention things like watching Space 1999, and yeah, I had that toy under, you know, for Christmas one year under the tree, and I had that toy, and it's just, you know, there's a great level of appreciation I have for him as a filmmaker, and mostly as a filmmaker. I never really became the hugest fan of his music, but man, I appreciate the fact that he is an artist through and through, and he is, you know, he's just. He has made an important impact, I think, on film in this day, I think, in terms of bringing back to life exploitation cinema, 70s era grindhouse, the old Universal throwbacks. He's done quite a remarkable job, I think, and House of a Thousand Corpses may be his brightest moment. I know structurally, mechanically, you know, Devil's Rejects is probably the superior film, but man, revisiting House last night, all I kept thinking to myself, you know, it's kind of multi-layered. You know, you begin with meeting Captain Spaulding, you know, at that roadside attraction which these two couples land at, and then you move from there to the Firefly clan home, and you have that whole thing unravel. But then there's that last piece, like when it totally goes off on a fantastical sort of, in some ways some would say critically unbelievable. You've just sort of laid the foundation of a pretty terrifying, unnerving film, and then you suddenly jump off over here and it doesn't really quite make sense. But you know, for me it does in a way, because it's like a tipping of the hat to Fulci in a way. I mean, you know, you watch The Beyond or how the Gates of Hell trilogy. Nightmare Logic, as JP would say. There is a bit of a throwback feel to Fulci, I think, in the final act of the film, when you're down in the labyrinth, and of course we have those people living in that murky, muddy water You know, it calls back Spider Baby, and, you know, the relatives are put under the floorboards in the basement. You know, you've got just the whole family element, you know, going back to house, the old dark house. And it really is an evolution of a vision. It's an evolution of this interesting family dynamic, the psychotic family in the house off the roadway, which you just don't want to go up and knock on the door in the middle of the night. You just don't want to. And I know that's the type of era that Rob Zombie longs for. You know, a day when there was no cell phones, there was no easy way of escape. If you're out 20 or 200 miles out in the middle of nowhere, and you find yourself in a precarious situation, you're probably screwed. And that is a great way to approach filmmaking, especially in the horror genre. But anyways, episode 7, Rob Zombie, just a bit of a tipping of my hat to him and his first film of the trilogy. And James will come in with The Devil's Rejects. I so have longed to hear his thoughts on that. And then next week, we're going to take a look at 3 from Hell, and 1 film next week. And we're both going to take separate stabs at it and see where we come out the other side. So, episode 7 of Schizophrenic Synopsis. Again, we're talking about Rob Zombie and his Firefly trilogy, I guess we can call it. And, man, happy Thanksgiving, an early one. That's just coming, right? And so... thanks for the views, thanks for the comments, just thanks for the subs, and as always, we always say, go Bills.